And let's go into the questions.
Kane, we really appreciate all the detail you went into. I have one question before we get to the questions. My question, is there a representative from SCSU here? We didn't get a confirmation, so because we have a lot of questions for SCSU, but we'll address those later. And secondly, you've met Fire Marshal Kane and our Council President, Shawnee Rivera. Will our other guests at the podium just pass the mic down and introduce yourself, your organization, and your role with the organization?
Good evening, I'm Daniel Hypes. I'm the other Assistant Fire Marshal for San Diego Fire Rescue. Oversee a couple different divisions within our Community Risk Reduction Division, one of them being our Wildland Management and Enforcement, which is why I'm here tonight, but nice to meet you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Lieutenant Chris Sharp from San Diego PD. I'm in charge of emergency planning, and so our job is to coordinate and train our officers to work in conjunction with our partners in the San Diego Fire Department. And we also will be responding to most major incidents to help with the command post and help coordinate the efforts of our officers when it comes to fighting the fires and upon the direction of the fire department regarding evacuations, traffic control, and whatnot you normally see out there for San Diego PD.
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much for having us tonight. My name is Erica Ferreira. I'm the Deputy Director of the Parks and Recreation Department's Open Space Division. Specifically, I oversee our brush management program here in the city of San Diego, as well as about half of our park ranger program that works within our open space. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Erica Michael. I'm the Senior Park Ranger for Open Space Canyons Division, which includes the areas of Talmadge and Kensington and the college area.
The first thing that we want to acknowledge is that thanks to one of our volunteers, this meeting has been Zoomed so that people who are out of town or otherwise weren't able to join us in person could also take part and benefit from the conversation. And so they've asked several questions in that chat mode, and we have put them into these piles and we'll answer them as we move forward through the questions. Thanks to the people on Zoom.
Okay, first question. How did this wildfire start? If you don't know, when will you know?
Sorry, I gotta pull it back up there. All right. Currently, right now, the fire itself is being investigated by MAST. It's an open investigation. One of the things that was asked me about the fire itself and how did it start and the rest that's going along with it. These are incredibly hard for us to diagnose we know the origin of where it started. That first actual picture that I had was taken by a civilian driving by in a car when it first started. So we know the origin of where it's at, but I want you to think about something right now. And the fact of us trying to investigate how it occurred, there was probably about 20,000 gallons of water dumped in that corner of everything where it started. So for us to see if there's an accelerant or anything else, most things are washed down. So our MAST department right now is going through, looking at witnesses, looking at videos and everything else, and the case is still open, trying to figure out where it started. I wish I could tell you something, but as of now, we do not have a cause of the fire.
Okay, second question. Could you try not to write a paragraph with your questions? Talmadge and Kensington residents who live southwest of the fire were told to evacuate to Allied Gardens, which is northeast of the fire. Why, and when did it make more sense to evacuate people away from the fire, further south or west, rather than toward the fire? Who is the best person?
You got a mic next to you.
Part of the evacuation process is really directed by San Diego PD in conjunction with fire. We'll get the direction from the incident commander, the IC for fire, about where this fire is going and where the closest, we call it a TEP, a temporary evacuation point. Obviously, when we send out the evacuation notices, whether it comes over your phone or whether it's via PA or the police officers knocking door to door, if we tell you to evacuate, we have to have a place for you to go. So we look for some place that might have facilities that are ready available, parking space and whatnot. The closest that we could determine that was going to be at least not in the path of the fire that we thought was going to be Allied Gardens Rec. And so it was close enough where it had the facilities that people could quickly go to. Now that's not to say if this thing got out of control that it would move, then we For the most part, especially with the freeway there, we were pretty confident that we could contain the fire in that immediate area and would not go through San Diego State area and whatnot. So that's why we picked that particular location.
Thank you. What additional safety, fire, and traffic resources will be allocated to the college area to accommodate the thousands of additional dorm and multifamily units planned for development? I think so.
Can you ask the question again? Is regarding the density and traffic control for population that's going to be increasing because of density? Is that?
That's basically it. We're
Okay.
all worried about added
Question
density.
for the city councilman.
I can tell you from the same that's a traffic engineering issue that they look at density, right, and they do studies and whatnot. I can't speak to what they approve when it comes to building permits and whatnot. I can just tell you from our perspective, it's gone through traffic engineering that looks at the traffic flow. That's why you'll see the markers that will go across the roads that will tabulate the amount of cars and density during days and times and directions. That's the only thing I see from our point.
Thank you for that. So I think one of the important lessons of tonight is the importance of coordination and collaboration. So there are a multitude of folks who are involved in any sort of decision and planning. So if I'm understanding correctly, STPD is looking at estimates for growth and the traffic patterns. Fire is obviously keeping tabs on this. The departments will then make budget requests that we trust are meant to accommodate the needs that they see from their vantage point in that department. The mayor then proposes a budget, and then the council approves or makes modifications to that budget. So that question involves many decision points along the way, and is including how many resources we have to work with. But at the very beginning of that is an assessment of need from each of the departments that are represented up here and others as well. So as much as we would like simple answers to every question that's proposed or will be asked tonight, oftentimes, as you've already heard, there aren't necessarily simple answers. So what I can tell you is this. We are keeping tabs on growth. We are planning for that growth. And we are being very careful to respond to the needs that are raised by our department leaders to do the best that we can to meet the needs of the communities in our district and across the city.
I'm sorry, can you read the question again? I don't think he answered the question.
Correct.
I'm happy to be up here. I'm happy to be in the firing line. But I'm also going to say this. There are experts up here to respond to very specific questions about fire, emergency response, and planning. And I think that the best use of this time would be to tap into those experts. I'm your city council member. I have decisions to make with respect to policy and budget. And we've gone back and forth in a number of different forums about those policy decisions. We just had a campaign and an election. I don't think that this is going to be the best use of that time to try to relitigate all of that. But I encourage you to do.
We do!
Hey,
That's fine, that's fine.
We have a lot of questions and we're only about 15 minutes left.
We want to know why you're allowing such density.
Please address your questions directly to the councilman on your own because we'd like to get to some other questions as
Folks,
well.
you have high-level leadership here from multiple departments, and I strongly encourage you to make use of the expertise that you have up here. I will answer the questions that they cannot answer, or that I have a role to play in. But I'm not going to relitigate policy decisions that have already been made. There are different opportunities and forums for that.
Okay, this is a question for the open space folks. Evidently, we need to learn to live with wildfire. How can we channel cross-sector funding towards minimizing the highest risk invasive species while regenerating resilient native ecosystems? I think I got that right. You want to see it?
Wow, that was a good question.
Yes, I'll read it again. Basically the question is, how can we minimize the highest risk invasive species, most flammable species that are growing in our canyons while keeping our resilient native species growing?
So I think we have many opportunities throughout our open space, working with our park rangers and volunteer groups and nonprofits throughout all our canyons and park areas. We offer volunteer, I know Erica does quite frequently, volunteer opportunities to do invasive removal within our parks and open spaces and restoration projects. So there is funding issues associated with that, but that's where our wonderful volunteers come in handy. I would certainly, we can direct you to our volunteer groups for that, but it is it's a little bit at a time that we try to get to. I hope that answered the question. There are opportunities.
All right, this question is about disclosures.
Excuse me, it's not enough.
This question is about
Not enough.
when you sell a property and you have to have an inspection, it appears that people are sometimes ignoring what they need to do. How are those inspections and orders to clean things up being enforced?
Yeah, so I think that question is referring to the Assembly Bill 38 inspection. So when there's a real estate transaction, you have to provide proof of a defensible space inspection showing that your property meets all of the requirements within 6 months of that transaction. So we currently conduct those. You can request an AB 38 inspection on our website, and basically what we're doing is that we go out and we make sure that you're complying with the minimum defensible space laws. As Assistant Fire Marshal King said, there's a lot of things that you can do that are going to make your home safer. A lot of those right now are, recommendations, things you can do. There is no requirement to meet current building standards if your home was built before 2007. So there's, but all that we're looking for in that inspection is that you are maintaining the minimum defensible space that you have to have. And then we will provide a report saying that we're in compliance with our local municipal code and state laws, and that's what we're looking for. If that answers the question.
Thank you. Here's a question. It says, what steps are being taken to ensure the ability of Alvarado Estates to evacuate, given there is only one point of ingress and egress? And I might add that in each of our communities present today, Talmadge, Kensington, El Cerrito, and Alvarado Estates, and also College View Estates, there are pockets within the neighborhood where more than 30 houses only have one point of exit. And those are some of our higher risk areas, especially along the canyon rims. And the question is, are there special things that might happen to better ensure the safety of those residents?
First of all, I used to live in Alvarado Estates, by the way. My family's up there, so I'm quite familiar with the neighborhood. I went there when I was going to college. I lived up there. And I do understand that there's one way in and one way out. I am not aware of any projects or plans, unless someone else can speak, regarding the entrance other than the one that leads down to Montezuma through the gated community, the front part of it. The gate was not there when I lived there. There is that side street that goes up to the back way through San Diego State, so it's a secondary, but you have to go through the main drive that goes down to Montezuma. So I don't know, the people that live in that neighborhood, I think you would have to find some way to go down the freeway from the backside. I don't see how that'd be viable.
That's an issue.
I'll just really quickly add to that. It's a question that we've continued to pose to look for creative opportunities to produce alternatives. I talked to Chief Stoll when he was in that position, prior to Chief Logan. Chief Logan and I have talked about it already. It's an ongoing conversation. Again, one of those things that seems much more complicated than me as a layman or others who don't have experience in emergency planning and evacuation might think. Because what I think is, can we create a path that folks can use in an emergency, and they immediately identify multiple reasons why that simple fix could actually create more danger than actual safety. So know that it is an ongoing conversation, something that I continue to push for, but we don't want to do is create any situation where folks believe that there is false safety. That's the worst thing that we can do, and that is why the conversation seems to be far more complicated than I initially thought it would be.
Thank
It's
you.
not enough answer.
We're going to move on. This is a question our fire safety councils have gotten over and over, and I'm afraid there isn't a great answer. But the question is, why are the palms allowed to get so overgrown in the first place in so many canyons? I know it's a tough one. Just pass it.
And the question was the palms?
I'm gonna hop in here real quick. It's all good. I'm gonna hop in real quick. On a lot of things, on when there is overgrowth, a lot of that is private property. I'll tell you right now. A lot of it is private property, and it's harder for us to enforce. And I'll let Hypes tell some more here in a minute. But I get this question asked a lot when I'm cruising around or around in the community. It's always, why don't you clear that lot? I can't clear that lot. It's privately owned. Most of the area and acreage that burned that we had on this fire was privately owned. It wasn't City of San Diego. It was privately owned. And so for us to go in there and clear that property out, would you like us to come in and knock down all your trees in your backyard? We can't. There's a process that we have to take. And Fire Marshal Hypes can talk about it, but for us, on those things, when I see most land, believe me, I've been in this community, I've been around here for 25 years working in this community, and if someone asks me something, I'll look it up, but if it's private property, we cannot touch that on that private property. Go ahead. You got anything?
Yeah, I'll just say that, because we have received complaints out there, there's a lot of areas that are overgrown. Kind of our scope of what we look at is that 100 feet of defensible space from a home. So there's a lot of areas that have a lot of growth. There's fuels in the canyons. We're aware of that. Part of that is, like Chief Ed is saying, it's someone's private property. It's their parcel. What we want to make sure is, if any part of that is within 100 feet of a home and we get a complaint, we can try to force or do an abatement on that property. If that homeowner's not willing to do it themselves, we can abate it. But again, our scope and the laws that we enforce are 100 feet. So when you're down at the bottom of a canyon, there's no structures, we don't really have that authority to abate something if it's not within that defensible space area.
So in open space areas, we have and work with great nonprofit partners that have absolutely done palm removals for us. Unfortunately, not in this particular area because, as we've said, it's private property. But across the road in Ruffin Canyon, just 2 years ago, there was a helicopter palm removal that I'm sorry, I don't remember the number of the palms. It was like 200. It was a tremendous amount. So we've done that several times, at least in the last 5 years throughout the city of San Diego. Again, it takes collaboration with our nonprofit partners who go and get grants to do this type of work. So we're very blessed to work with them. And then, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, we do smaller projects, and then there's restoration that has to come behind that because of the environmental impacts that are left behind. So please know that we do that. It's not on the grand scale that we would like to see it, but we continue to actively find grants internally, but also work with our nonprofits, and we will continue to do that. Thank you.
Can you just give us a ballpark figure of how much that cost? Because I remember that removal was really expensive. It's like a couple million or something.
I know, I do know somebody who knows this answer. I believe the last pond lift we did was $2 million. He's shaking his head. It was between $1 and $2 million. Over the course of 2 days, helicopters are very expensive.
I know the answer.
Go ahead, our guest.
All right, thank you. Some of you were asking earlier about how to be involved with restoration. That's something that is one of my favorite things about my job, is going in and restoring canyons, removing a lot of the invasives and then coming back and planting native plants. A perfect way to do that is with community involvement. These open spaces were saved because community members spoke up and didn't want them developed. So we need that same kind of community participation to restore these canyons. And, picking and choosing where we do restoration is also based on accessibility. Accessibility is for volunteers, for work crews to be able to get there, for us to be able to tow water in water areas as well. But we do have a website where you can reach us, and it's Canyons Volunteer at sandiego.gov. And I'd be happy to include you all in any of my volunteer restoration events.
I would add that there's some canyons that have very active volunteer canyon societies, and they really make a difference in taking care of their canyons. Mission Hills, I think, is one, and so if citizens will volunteer, sometimes there's matching resources, but if citizens don't step up, sometimes it isn't. The next question is another difficult one. I'm going to put you guys in firing line here. Is there a plan to work toward ensuring that encampments do not come back and cause fires?
I know the answer.
Please, sir.
I can only speak for San Diego PD when it comes to our response to complaints regarding encampments and canyons and whatnot. We do have that Get It Done Act. Obviously, the division that you live in, whether it's Eastern Division or if it's South of Montezuma and it's Mid-City Division, you can always call the divisions and file a complaint. And we do have our neighborhood policing teams. That's their sole job, is to go out and deal with the quality of life issues. We'll go in and evaluate whether they're going to the camps or not. There is a process that we have to do before we remove camps, and it's got to do with legal notification and whatnot before we can go in there and sweep out the camps. But we can only do, enforcement when someone actually files the complaint, and then we can take action. And I can only speak from our experience that you have to call, and it may not be done right away. But when you do file a complaint, especially multiple complaints, that gives us the ability to go in there and actually move people out of the camp.
I know the answer, ma'am.
Please let our panel answer questions. No questions from the floor, no answers from the floor.
Can I
Okay.
chime in real quick? Who here has actually used the Get It Done app? That's fantastic. That's great, because we get those complaints. And when we start seeing complaints that are, the same thing over and over again, it prioritizes it. So if you see these homeless encampments, submit a Get It Done. You see these issues around your neighborhoods, submit a Get It Done. Just keep doing it. Organized, keep doing it.
I know the answer, sir. And from Dr. Huskin, the candidate.
Sir, I have a really great question. This is regards to our wonderful elementary school party, and I'd like to acknowledge that the principal of the school is here with us tonight, as are several of the school parents. They did an incredible job to evacuate the whole elementary school and staff, and they actually took the children safely at the back of the school and up the hillside and convened at the Viejas Arena. And while everybody was safe, and that's top priority, there are some questions, and here's one of them. Was this considered a successful traffic evacuation? As a parent, we could not get to our children for hours. No visible traffic, police, and Montezuma and College, and the light was blinking. So, what steps can be taken, to help to ensure that in the future, the evacuation of the local school and the co-location with a major university in all of the neighborhoods is successful and safe?
Okay. Regarding the traffic control, so there was multiple issues that we had to deal with. One is obviously the fire itself and trying to get the Montezuma shut down so we could get only fire apparatus up there. What that did was that caused obviously the traffic congestion through Fairmont, Colwood, Elkhorn Boulevard, College, Montezuma, College Avenue, all the way down to the 8 and 8 itself. So we were inundated. We had trying to get police officers in the area. I think at the high point we had over 80. Trying to deal with getting enough evacuation teams because we all know Colwood is very dense when it comes to the apartment complex, Colwood Way. and then Alvarado Estates. We had San Diego State Police assisting us, we had La Mesa Police assisting us, and we had CHP. La Mesa was taking over control at Montezuma College, and we had officers down at Alvarado College, all along Montezuma, Fairmont, and whatnot. The congestion was an issue, and I will tell you that unfortunately another wrench got thrown in there was then the active shooting call that happened at San Diego State. And that threw a wrench in. It was almost like a lieutenant's test for San Diego PD where you just keep throwing injects in. And we're gonna put something else on top of that. I'm not trying to make light of it. I just want you to be aware that now we're trying to deal with two major incidents. We have the fire and evacuations that are continuing. We have traffic control. We have kids that are being moved onto the campus that now is going under lockdown. We have a victim and patient care, gunshot victim, and now we have another person possibly running around the campus armed with a handgun on Halloween night.
That's why it's a scary Halloween.
Yeah. So I'm not making light of the fire. I'm just saying we had some juggling as the San Diego Police Department to do that night, and there was a lot of movement. Officers that went to the fire, they got pulled over to San Diego State, then they got pulled over to traffic control, that then got pulled over back over to San Diego State. We dealt with helping with evacuation of the children because we wanted to get them out of the fire, but unfortunately now they're into a lockdown zone over at the arena. Most of the time, we look at elementary schools, hospitals as a defensible space, right? Rather than evacuate, we'll just go ahead and have the fire department assist us with hardening that target and then keeping everybody in place because there's already built-in defensible space. And then we also don't have traffic going back and forth with parents picking up the kids, and now they're inserted in the middle of the problem. It was unique because we had the fire and then everything else going on, and there was really no good way to get your kids, to be honest with you. I think it was the principal or somebody can speak up. The traffic control for the parents was rerouted from Alvarado to come up the back way through the north side of San Diego State up to the VA House Arena, so we could completely bypass College and Alcone Boulevard, College and Montezuma, which was a parking lot. It wasn't always a parking lot for everybody trying to leave. It was a parking lot for our units trying to get in. And we had officers that took 25 minutes just with lights and siren trying to get there. But I mean, if you're trying to get out of the way of the police officer, you got nowhere to go, then you're stuck too. And we all get that. So those are the challenges we had for that particular fire. And then that incident going forward is the traffic control. Were some units then leaving and the lights were put on flash because now we have somebody with a gunshot victim? That happened, okay? Eventually those placements were then replaced later once we had units free. But our main concern was not traffic control, it was trying to find a shooter and paging care up at San Diego State, along with the fire that was going on and the evacuations. Those are our two main priorities, traffic control and secondary.
Would closing the campus?
Very quick, thank you for that. Where's our principal and the teachers from Harding?
Christy Aragon.
Hi. Can we give Principal Aragon a so I'll just share from my vantage point. My first stop was to Chief Logan on Montezuma to check in with him at where they were commanding the situation. From there, I went to SCSU and I watched them stay with every single child until every single child was picked up and maintain their calm. With a fire going on, and then an active shooting situation, right? So not creating panic with the kids, not creating additional panic for the San Diego State students who were there. It was handled with as much love and care as I could possibly imagine that being handled with, and I want to appreciate that. What I also saw was an additional layer of complexity that wasn't mentioned here. 2 more police departments that were thrown in the mix. We had San Diego Unified Police and San Diego State Police, who also had to coordinate through all of this. So the layers of complexity and coordination that were required on every single level, I felt I have a different perspective on how hard these folks work and how many things need to go right in order to protect people. And so I think the question is asked, was it considered a success? And look, we're continuing to have conversations about why communication was a little bit choppy. I escorted some folks back to their home because they had a hard time getting back once the evacuation had been lifted and the communication hadn't gotten out to everyone. We can certainly find ways to point out opportunities to do better in the future. But there was a home loss, which is a tragedy. Nobody was injured and nobody died. And every student at that school went home sick. And so at a top level, high level priority perspective, I think it was a success in terms of evacuation. And I think that everyone up here deserves an incredible amount of appreciation. The faculty and staff at Hardy Elementary deserves an incredible amount of appreciation. And that does not mean that we won't aim to do better, but I don't think that that should be lost. And again, what I got to witness in terms of that care for the students at Hardy on Halloween was a very, very inspiring and incredible thing, and I just want to say thank you for that.
Thank you, Council President. Yes, of course, we're going into Thanksgiving and so forth. We all have a lot to be grateful for. And how everybody worked together and rose to the occasion when we least expected it, and yet we might have known to prepare ourselves, and now we're going to work together to do just that.